I've got to ask this, right? So the classic Iron Sheik story is from 1988. He's feuding with Jim Duggan, and then he's caught in a car with Jim Duggan with some recreational goodies, as you might call them. And Vince McMahon says they're both fired. They'll never be back again. The quote attributed to Vince is, "This business is bigger than a six-pack and a blowjob," is what he says. And then obviously Jim Duggan turns back up in a few months. Iron Sheik turns back up in a couple of years when there's another spot for him. Do you know, apart from that example I've just given you, do you know of any warring on-screen rivals who were caught in public together, and what was the punishment handed down?
Oh, there's a lot of guys been caught in the same bars with guys they were feuding with. A lot of them didn't care. And a lot of them said they would go over there and talk to the guy, and people would see it. They would see it. And if anybody said anything about it, he said, "Hey, man, we're off work." I said, oh, that's okay. That's okay. He said, "We could fight now, but why? I don't get paid," which made sense. And guys would understand that. But going into a bar and having a fight, they just lock you up and take you to jail. And they would tell fans that. I think with the guys who really cared, let's go back. I'll take you back to the days of Johnny Valentine and Wahoo McDaniel. You know how Gunther throws those chops?
Mm-hmm.
And these guys wouldn't go 10 minutes a night, 15. They'd go 40, 45, 50, sometimes almost go time limit draw. And man, they were bleeding from their chests, literally bleeding. And the people would sit there and you could hear it. They made believers out of the first 10 rows of ringside, probably the whole arena. And they made believers out of themselves. Johnny Valentine had a story that they might think wrestling's fake, but they'll know one thing for damn sure is that I'm not. And he had Johnny Valentine drew a lot of money, but he drew it the hard way. He worked for it. And I've said this before, that's who Gunther reminds me of, especially those big hard chops. But as far as running around, piling around with your guy you're working with, in Memphis, it would get you probably fired. We never tested it. And if it's an emergency, yeah, you could get by with it. But that's the way we lived for up to probably the 1990. Is we it was like the little truth that's not talked about. So
I believe it wasn't Eddie Graham and Bill Watts would probably definitely fire you if it got back to them that you were in public with your on-screen rival.
Yeah, Bill Watts could, according to who it was. Bill Watts would first look at how it's going to affect him. And if it was two guys that couldn't draw any money or wasn't drawing any money, sometimes he got rid of them because he was going to get rid of them anyway. And Eddie Graham he may have done it, but I never heard of him doing it to anybody. See, those guys, you could actually, the thing with Bill and Eddie, you could literally go in and sit down and talk to them. And they would talk to you as a talent, not as a promoter. Just going to say, "What are you going to do with me?" This, that, and the other. And I always had a lot of respect for Eddie Graham. And I had a lot of respect for Bill Watts, not the way he paid, but I had a lot of respect for him because these guys went from wrestling to owning their own territory and producing great TV.